His enemies called him the Scourge of God. His soldiers called him the sword arm of the Caliphate. And, at his peak, he commanded more men than most medieval kings could even imagine. He conquered territory across today's Iran, Iraq, Syria, Turkey, Armenia, Georgia, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India. More than 30 kingdoms, cities, or states were broken by his advance. And yet, if you ask most people today about the great conquerors of history, they'll name Alexander, Genghis Khan, Napoleon. Almost no one will say his name, Alp Arslan, the hero lion of the Seljuk Empire, the general who conquered 32 nations and changed the map of the medieval world. But whose name history quietly buried? Let's bring him back. We begin not with Alp Arslan himself, but with a caravan. It is the year 1040. Across the burning plains of Khorasan, what is now northeastern Iran and Turkmenistan, a line of tents and wagons stretches toward the horizon. They are not merchants, they are a people in motion, Turkic nomads from the Central Asian steppe. They've spent generations as mercenaries and raiders on the edges of great empires, Persian, Arab, Byzantine, even Chinese. But now, pushed by rival tribes and pulled by opportunity, they are moving west like a tide. Among them is a ruling clan named after their ancestor, Seljuk. They do not yet have an empire. They don't yet have a capital. What they do have are horses, bows, and an iron certainty that God is on their side. Within a single lifetime, these wandering warriors will shatter old powers, create a super-state stretching from the Hindu Kush to the Mediterranean, and one of their princes will lead them into legend. Our story is the story of that prince, Alp Arslan, second Sultan of the Great Seljuk Empire. To understand how he became the general who humbled Byzantium and dominated the Islamic world, we first need to step into a world in crisis. By the mid-11th century, the Islamic world is powerful, but fractured. In Baghdad, the Abbasid Caliph, once the supreme leader of a vast, unified empire, is now largely a figurehead. Real power has slipped into the hands of military strongmen, local dynasties, and competing warlords. In Iran and Iraq, the Shia Buyid dynasty has overshadowed the caliph for decades. In Egypt, the Fatimid Caliphate rules as a rival center of power. To the north and west, the Byzantine Empire still stands, rich, cultured, and dangerous. In Central Asia, Ghaznavid sultans rule a huge empire stretching into India, but they are stretched thin and overextended. Every border is a frontier, every frontier is a war zone. This is the world the Seljuks step into. They are newcomers, Turkic tribes who've only recently converted to Sunni Islam. At first, they are hired as mercenaries, their horse archers valued for mobility and ferocity. But mercenaries who win battles learn quickly that they can win thrones too. Under a leader named Tughril Beg, the Seljuks smash the Ghaznavids at Dandanakan in 1040, take over Khorasan, and steadily move west. By 1055, Tughril walks into Baghdad not as a raider, but as a liberator, driving out Shia influence and presenting himself as the defender of Sunni orthodoxy. The Abbasid Caliph, desperate for a protector, crowns him Sultan, the shadow of God on earth. Overnight, the Seljuks go from ambitious nomads to official rulers of the Islamic world, from the frontier to the throne. And among those watching all this unfold is a boy. His name is Muhammad bin Dawood Chagri. History will remember him by his royal name, Alp Arslan. He is born around 1029, the son of Chagri Beg, one of the key Seljuk brothers. He grows up half in tents, half in captured cities. His earliest memories are not of palaces, but of camps. Not of books, but of war councils. He learns to ride, to shoot, to read the Quran, but also to navigate something even more dangerous than enemy arrows: Seljuk politics. Because this new empire is not a tidy, centralized state. It is a family business held together by blood and force. Tukrul, the senior brother, is Sultan in Baghdad. Chagri, Alp Arslan's father, rules Khorasan in the east. Other relatives govern other provinces, each with their own armies, ambitions, and grudges. Young Alp Arslan fights his first campaigns in his father's service, putting down rebels, seizing fortresses, and learning the art of war the Seljuk way. Don't stand and die for honor. Draw the enemy out, harass, feint, retreat, strike again. A war of motion and patience. He is not yet a legendary general. He is a prince doing his duty, but his talent is obvious. When his father Chagri dies in 1060, Alp Arslan inherits Khorasan, the vast eastern half of the Seljuk realm. He rules from Nishapur and Merv, cities that had been jewels of the old Persian world. Now, they are the beating heart of a new Turkic empire. But no succession in this dynasty is simple. In Baghdad, Tugril, the Sultan, has no sons. He dies in 1063. In his will, he designates not Alp Arslan, but another relative as his heir. It looks, for a moment, like the Seljuk world might fracture. This is the moment that will define Alp Arslan's rise. He could accept a lesser role, rule his eastern domains and avoid civil war. Instead, he chooses the path of every great conqueror. He marches. With the support of powerful emirs and tribal chiefs, Alp Arslan brings his Khorasani army west. Battle by battle, he defeats his rivals. He moves methodically, not like a raider, but like a man setting foundations. He takes Ray, an ancient Persian city near modern Tehran. He secures his rear. He makes deals with some rivals, crushes others. In 1063, he enters Baghdad as his uncle once did. The Caliph places the black robe of authority upon him, and the khutbah, the Friday sermon, is read in his name. Alp Arslan is now Sultan of the Great Seljuk Empire. But note what's happening here. He's not only a warlord, he's stepping into a sacred political theater. The Abbasid Caliphate gives his conquests legitimacy. In turn, his sword arms the Caliph with actual power. It is a fusion that will define the Islamic Middle East for decades, and Alp Arslan is about to show what he can do with it. The empire he inherits is large, but not yet secure. Inside, restive governors and semi-independent princes eye their own chances. Outside, enemies circle. To the east, the Ghaznavids still hold parts of Afghanistan and India. To the south, the Shia Fatimids contest influence in Syria. To the north, Armenian and Georgian princes, as well as local Muslim rulers, guard the Caucasus. And to the west, the lion in the west is Byzantium. For centuries, the Byzantines had been the superpower of the eastern Mediterranean. They survived Arab sieges of Constantinople. They fought Bulgar and Rus and Frank. They had seen empires rise and fall, and still their golden city stood. In the mid-11th century, after some internal turmoil and military decline, they are not at their strongest, but on paper, they remain formidable. Their armies are a patchwork of native troops, Armenian warriors, and foreign mercenaries. Their bureaucracy is a machine that has outlived dynasties. Their emperors carry the legacy of Rome. Between these two worlds, the Islamic Seljuk East and the Christian Byzantine West, lies Anatolia and the Caucasus, a frontier of fortresses, mountain passes, and wealthy cities, and whoever controls it will dominate the region. Alp Arslan understands this, but he also understands something else. An empire cannot fight on every front at once. So he moves carefully. First, he secures his base. He campaigns in the east against the Ghaznavids and local rulers, expanding Seljuk control into what is now Afghanistan and beyond. In the north, he pushes into Central Asia, where Turkic tribes had once roamed freely. He makes alliances, grants titles, and installs a man who will become one of the most important figures of the medieval Islamic world, Nizam al-Mulk. If Alp Arslan is the sword of the Seljuk Empire, Nizam al-Mulk is its brain. He becomes Alp Arslan's vizier, his chief minister and political architect. A brilliant administrator and thinker, Nizam al-Mulk will later write the famous Siyasatnama, a manual of governance that will influence Muslim states for centuries. Together, the warrior sultan and the scholar bureaucrat begin to turn a conquering nomad confederation into a functioning empire. They reform tax collection. They appoint capable governors. They build madrasas, colleges, to promote Sunni Islamic scholarship, especially of the Shafi'i and Hanafi schools. In Baghdad, they shore up Abbasid authority. In Khorasan, they invest in stability. But Alp Arslan is not content with paperwork and politics. He is a man of the frontier. And the frontier that tempts him most is the one where Islam and Christendom meet. Anatolia. Imagine the map now, from the deserts of Syria to the cities of Iran, from the oases of Central Asia to the rich plains near the Tigris. A single sultan's authority is beginning to be felt. Yet, between his empire and the sea lies a belt of territories. Armenian principalities, Georgian kingdoms, Byzantine themes that have long served as buffers and battlegrounds. In the mid-1060s, Alp Arslan turns his attention there. He marches north and west, leading raids into Armenia and Georgia. His armies move fast, built around Turkic cavalry, light horse archers and armored lancers, supported by local infantry and allied contingents. City after city yields or is taken. Fortresses are besieged, garrisons replaced, tribute demanded. Alp Arslan defeats the Georgian king Bagrat IV and forces him to accept Seljuk suzerainty. Nearby, Armenian lands fracture under the pressure. Some nobles flee to Byzantine protection, others bargain with the Seljuks. Each campaign adds new territories, new vassals, new prestige. From the east, from the north, from the south, pressure builds on the Byzantine eastern frontier. The old balance is cracking. But if there is one man in Constantinople who believes he can stop the Seljuk tide, it is the Emperor Romanos IV Diogenes. Romanos is not a bookish courtier, he's a soldier. He came to the throne through marriage, wed to the widowed Empress Eudokia to stabilize a shaky political situation. He sees clearly what many in the capital preferred to ignore. The Byzantine army, once the terror of the region, has been hollowed out by years of mismanagement and reliance on mercenaries. Villages in Anatolia are being raided. Fortresses are being probed. Turkic horsemen ride daringly close to important cities. If nothing is done, Anatolia, the breadbasket and manpower core of the empire, could be lost. Romanos decides he will restore the armies. He will march east. He will confront this Seljuk Sultan directly. He envisions not a border skirmish, but a decisive victory that will put the nomads back in their place and secure his reputation. In 1071, he gets his chance. Alp Arslan, having secured much of his eastern front, is at that moment occupied in Syria. He's besieging Aleppo, pressing against local rivals and nudging against Fatimid influence. News arrives that the Byzantine emperor himself is marching toward the frontier with a massive army. Romanos isn't just coming to repel raids, he is pushing deep into Seljuk-claimed territory. Alp Arslan now faces a choice. Ignore him, finish Syria, risk losing his northern gains. Or wheel his army around and meet one of the most powerful monarchs of Christendom in open battle. For a man called Hero Lion, the choice is obvious. He makes peace, however temporary, with the local Muslim powers in Syria, rides north with his army, and aims for a small town in eastern Anatolia. A place history books would remember simply because of what is about to happen nearby: Manzikert. Manzikert itself is not a huge prize. It's a fortified town in what is now eastern Turkey, part of a chain of Byzantine defenses. Romanos reaches it first. His army is large, perhaps 40,000 to 60,000 men, though medieval numbers are always debatable. It is a vast composite force: Byzantine regulars, Anatolian levies, Armenian infantry, and contingents of Frankish and Norman mercenaries. He even has Turkic mercenaries, men not so different from Alp Arslan's own riders. His plan is to secure Manzikert, then use it as a base for further operations. Alp Arslan's army is smaller, perhaps half the size, but far more cohesive. It is built around Seljuk and allied Turkic horsemen used to their commander's style. They know how to live off the land, how to move fast, how to fight on their terms. They also know that if they lose, they risk not merely defeat, but the unraveling of the empire they've just begun to build. The stage is set. An emperor who believes he must win to save his state. A sultan who believes he must win to secure his. The fate of Anatolia hangs in the balance. What happens next will shock both worlds. As the two armies move toward each other, Alp Arslan does something striking. He dresses in white. White garments, white turban, unadorned. Not the glittering armor or rich robes you'd expect from a medieval sultan. He tells his men that today they fight for the faith. The sources, especially later Muslim chroniclers, describe him as seeking martyrdom if necessary, placing his fate in God's hands. Is every detail perfectly accurate? We can't be certain. But what matters is the image they built: a warrior sultan who leads from the front, ready to die as much as to win. On the Byzantine side, things are already less unified. Romanos has to manage rival generals, jealous courtiers, and mercenaries of doubtful loyalty. The most critical of these is Andronikos Doukas, a member of a powerful family opposed to Romanos' rule. They didn't want him on the throne. Some, it seems, would not mind seeing him fail. As the two armies approach the plain near Manzikert, there are skirmishes, miscommunications, and the nervous shuffling of tens of thousands of feet. Alp Arslan does not rush. He relies on what steppe commanders have used for centuries: flexibility and the art of the feigned retreat. When battle is joined, Seljuk horse archers swarm the Byzantine flanks, loosing clouds of arrows, then melting away before a countercharge. Each time the Byzantines press forward, the Seljuks yield ground. The line bends, never quite breaking. Dust fills the air, drums thunder. War cries in Greek, Armenian, Turkic, Arabic, Latin, and more crash across the field. Romanos, at the center, does his best to hold cohesion. The day wears on. Byzantine troops, many of them heavily armored, grow tired and thirsty. Their cavalry, trying to chase down elusive horse archers, stretch the line thin. Alp Arslan keeps his core intact, probing, waiting. He is not trying to smash the Byzantines head-on. He is waiting for the moment all steppe commanders crave, when fatigue, confusion, and poor communication create a crack. Late in the day, Romanos realizes his army is too strung out. He decides to pull back, to regroup before nightfall. He sends orders down the line, a controlled retreat. But orders given on a battlefield are not the same as orders received. Some commanders misinterpret the move as a sign of defeat. Some perhaps see their chance. And on one crucial flank, Andronikos Doukas does something Romanos will never forgive. He turns his troops and marches away. Whether he believed the battle lost, or simply wanted it to be lost, remains a subject of debate. But the effect is the same. A portion of the Byzantine army simply abandons the field. The controlled retreat collapses into confusion. Dust and dusk swallow formations that were already fragile. Alp Arslan sees his moment. He signals his riders. The feigned retreat ends. The crescent closes. Seljuk horsemen sweep in from the sides and rear, loosing arrows into panicked troops, cutting down stragglers, driving wedges between desperate units. What had been a near stalemate becomes, in an hour, a disaster. Romanos fights bravely, wounded in the hand and the leg. But courage cannot hold an army together when the structure has already been eaten by mistrust. Surrounded, with his guards cut down around him, the emperor of the Romans is captured. News spreads through the camp like fire. The Basileus himself is a prisoner. Across the medieval world, people struggle to believe it. In the Latin West, the idea that a Christian emperor could be taken alive by a Muslim sultan is a stunning reversal. In the Islamic world, it is heralded as a sign of divine favor, and in Alp Arslan's camp, a nervous hush settles, because now the Sultan must decide, what do you do with a captured emperor? Later chronicles, again especially Muslim ones, preserve a famous scene. Alp Arslan has Romanos brought before him. The emperor is no longer in imperial purple, but in rougher garments, bearing the marks of battle. The Sultan, in contrast, sits in simple white, bow beside him, and asks through an interpreter, "What would you have done to me had I been brought before you as a prisoner?" Romanos answers honestly, "Perhaps I would have killed you or paraded you in my capital." Alp Arslan is said to have replied, "My punishment is far heavier." He then has Romanos placed in chains, but treats him with a measure of respect. They talk, they negotiate. The terms are, on paper, harsh. The Byzantines must pay a heavy ransom, cede important fortresses in Anatolia, and acknowledge, in effect, Seljuk superiority in the region. But here is the key. Alp Arslan does not destroy Byzantium. He does not march on Constantinople. He does not blind or execute the emperor. He releases Romanos to return home, expecting the treaty to be honored. This is not mercy in a modern sense. It is a calculation. A shattered enemy can be dangerous in its death throes. A humiliated but intact Byzantine Empire, paying tribute or ceding ground, is a manageable neighbor. For Alp Arslan, the real victory is not one spectacular sack of a capital. It is control of the frontier and freedom to expand where he wants. But history has a sense of irony, because the man he lets go will never truly rule again. When Romanos returns to Byzantine territory, he doesn't find loyalty. He finds a coup. His rivals in Constantinople have already declared him deposed. A new emperor sits on the throne. Romanos is arrested, blinded in a brutal, botched procedure, and dies soon after from his wounds. The empire he tried to save descends into internal chaos. Emperor follows emperor in rapid succession. Civil wars consume resources and morale. And in that chaos, Turkic warlords, many of them formerly vassals or mercenaries, move into Anatolia. City by city, fortress by fortress. What had been a Byzantine heartland becomes something new. The land of the Turks. It is crucial to understand this. Alp Arslan did not personally conquer every inch of Anatolia. He did not annex Turkey as we know it today, but his victory at Manzikert destroyed the old equilibrium. He broke the Byzantine military mystique, shattered their eastern defenses, and opened the gate. In the vacuum that followed, his successors and independent Turkish dynasties, like the Danishmends and eventually the Ottomans, would build a new world. The road to the Ottoman Empire, to the conquest of Constantinople in 1453, to the modern state of Turkey itself, runs through the dust of Manzikert and through the decisions of Alp Arslan. But for the Sultan himself, the story doesn't end there. After Manzikert, Alp Arslan is at the height of his power. He is Sultan over one of the largest states on earth. From the borders of China to the edge of the Mediterranean, his name is read in the khutbah. He is, in the language of later chroniclers, the conqueror of 32 nations. A poetic way of saying he has subdued more rival polities than most rulers even meet. He returns east to consolidate. He plans new campaigns, aiming to bring more of Central Asia firmly under Seljuk control. But if his rise has been swift, his end will be even swifter. And it will not come from an emperor, a crusading army, or some legendary duel. It will come from a single angry man in a small fortress on the edge of the empire. In 1072, Alp Arslan campaigns against a rebellious ruler in Transoxiana, the region beyond the Oxus River, in today's Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan. The target is a minor fortress, ruled by a local chief named Yusuf al-Khwarezmi. The Seljuks besiege it and force its surrender. Yusuf is brought before the Sultan in chains. Now, in many courts of this era, the fate of such a prisoner is uncertain. Some are pardoned, some ransomed, some executed. Alp Arslan, confident in his authority, decides to make an example. He orders Yusuf to be shot with arrows. To emphasize the ritual, he has the man bound. But the Sultan, perhaps out of curiosity or arrogance, decides to confront him first. According to the chronicler Ibn al-Athir, Yusuf looks at the Sultan and says, "Do as you please with me. I will meet my fate as God wills." Alp Arslan, perhaps provoked, orders one of his guards to loosen the prisoner's bonds so he can speak or move. In that moment, Yusuf lunges. In a flash, the bound prisoner seizes a dagger and drives it into the Sultan. The tent explodes into chaos. Guards cut Yusuf down, but the damage is done. Alp Arslan has been mortally wounded. The great conqueror, the man who humbled an emperor and dominated half the known world, falls not to a rival king, but to a condemned rebel's desperate strike. He is carried to his bed, bleeding in shock. In his final hours, sources tell us he reflects. As many medieval chroniclers love to imagine great men reflecting. He is said to have remarked, "I have conquered many lands, yet I could not foresee the stroke of this miserable man." It's a line both poignant and theatrical, the kind of thing later writers would polish. Whether word for word or not, it captures a truth. Even the mightiest generals are never fully in control. Alp Arslan dies on November 24th, 1072, somewhere along the Oxus. He is in his early 40s. The empire he helped build does not die with him, but it will never have another sultan quite like him. So who was Alp Arslan really? We can list his titles, his victories, his borders. Conqueror of Armenia and Georgia. Victor of Manzikert. Expander of the Seljuk domains across Iran, Iraq, and Central Asia. We can tally the 32 nations attributed to his conquests, a medieval way of counting enemy states, principalities, and cities brought under Seljuk control. But numbers alone don't explain why he mattered. His importance lies in three intertwined legacies: political, religious, and geopolitical. Politically, he transformed the Seljuks from a rising clan into a true empire. Yes, his uncle Tughril opened the door, but Alp Arslan, with Nizam al-Mulk, built the corridors and rooms behind it. They created structures of governance, from tax systems to provincial administration, that would be copied by later Muslim dynasties. The idea of a strong sultan protecting a spiritual caliph in Baghdad owes much to their partnership. Religiously, his reign marked a shift in the Islamic world. Under his rule, and that of his son Malik Shah, the Seljuk Empire became a patron of Sunni Islam. They founded Nizamiya madrasas, colleges, that trained generations of scholars, including, according to some traditions, the great theologian Al-Ghazali. They rolled back Shia political dominance in key cities, weakening rivals like the Buyids and pushing against the Fatimids. The Sunni revival of the 11th and 12th centuries, the intellectual flowering in Baghdad and Nishapur, they carry the imprint of Seljuk policy. Geopolitically, Alp Arslan's victory at Manzikert reshaped the whole medieval Mediterranean. By fracturing Byzantine control of Anatolia, he set off a chain reaction. Turkic tribes streamed into the region, founding beyliks, small principalities that would become the building blocks of later states. The weakening of Byzantium alarmed Western Christendom. Within a few decades, calls for aid from an embattled Constantinople and the fear of Muslim advances would help inspire the First Crusade. In other words, when Crusaders marched east under the sign of the cross, they were marching into a world that Alp Arslan had helped create. The echoes of his decisions reverberated from Jerusalem to Paris to Istanbul for centuries. And yet, despite all this, his name rarely appears in popular lists of great conquerors. Why? Partly because his empire did not last as a unified bloc. After his son Malik Shah's brilliant but brief reign, the Great Seljuk Empire fragmented. Regional branches in Anatolia, Syria, and Iran went their own ways. The Ottoman Empire, which would later dominate these lands, traced its origins to a different branch of Turkic warriors. In Western narratives, the story tends to jump from Byzantium straight to the Crusades and then the Ottomans, leaving the Seljuks as a hazy prelude. In many textbooks, Alp Arslan is a line, if that. Even within some parts of the Islamic world, later dynasties overshadowed his memory. But in the 11th century, to many, he was what Napoleon or Genghis would be centuries later, the man whose campaigns rewrote the map. So, when you look today at the map of the Middle East and Anatolia, at Turkey, Iran, Iraq, Syria, at the patchwork legacies of Turkic and Persian and Arab cultures, you are seeing, faintly but undeniably, the mark of a sultan in white on a dusty plain outside Manzikert. His name was Alp Arslan, the general who conquered 32 nations, but whose shadow is larger than his fame. History is full of figures like him, men and women who shaped entire eras but slipped out of the popular imagination. If you'd like to keep exploring stories of those forgotten architects of our world, the ones behind the big names you already know, consider subscribing to the channel. Leave a comment if you'd like a deep dive into the Seljuk Empire as a whole, or into Nizam al-Mulk, the mastermind behind the throne. And if you made it this far, thanks for walking this road through the 11th century with me. Because the more we uncover these hidden lives, the clearer it becomes. History isn't just a list of kings and battles. It's a network of choices, chances, and people, famous and forgotten, whose echoes still shape the world we live in today.